Hey there everybody, how's it going? My name is Nova Aurora, bringing you another Battlefield 4 gameplay commentary today. And the round in the background here is something of a metaphor for the subject that I want to talk about. That is, it starts off pretty good. There's a lot of nice moments, couple of bad ones, but for the most part it's pretty fun and entertaining. However, over the course of the round, it slowly starts to degrade, and you can see signs that it might not turn out so well, but there's still enough fun stuff to keep it entertaining and interesting. However, by the end of it, it's mostly died off and left you with nothing really but a crippled, mostly empty, steaming pile of shit with nothing but a facade of pretty stats to show for it. And if you haven't figured out what I am referring to yet and what this video is going to be about, it is going to be about the state of Battlefield 4 as an entire game right now, and my predictions about the foreseeable future for it. I'm sure at this point you're thinking that this is going to turn into another one of those videos ranting on for a million hours about how terrible the game is, and how as responsible consumers we need to strike out against EA and do all sorts of horrible, aggressive legal things to punish them for the sins that they've done to us. And I agree that certainly EA and DICE have not exactly increased the trust that we have in them with Battlefield 4, but I'm not going to make this video a vitriolic rant against them, at least not in its entirety. I'm going to be trying to take an objective look at the whole situation here, and talk a little bit about what my personal opinions are in regards to the state of the game, and where I think it still has potential, and where I think that we probably should not be putting our trust in them at all anymore. To start things off, let's just get really the obvious negative things over with first. The game still has a fair bit of bugs and technical issues that need to be sorted out. You saw there, I believe it was on my previous life in this footage, I had to quickly go into the main menu of the game by pressing escape because the crosshairs of my weapon disappeared, and I found out that when that happens, the hit registration markers also disappear, which makes shooting a lot more difficult and annoying, and in doing so, I wasn't able to react to that guy in time and got myself killed. So there's a lot of things like that that still plague the game and make it far from an optimal experience. Then, of course, there are some other technical issues on, admittedly, a more minor scale than they started out being, with regards to crashes and some compatibility issues. Supposedly, I have not experienced these, but they do still exist from what I've heard. So yes, there's lots of things that still need to be fixed. The netcode, I forgot to mention, the netcode is nothing short of a disaster in some experiences, and hit registration, some localized lag issues, the rubber banding, the micro stuttering, all of that is still problematic. However, putting that aside for a moment, let's look at some of the things that have been improved. I'm going to reference back to the video that I made about a month ago entitled China Rising is Broken. And in that video, I said that I would talk about this issue again when some of the things had been fixed, after some time had gone by, and after DICE had had an opportunity to patch the game and actually make some of these changes. And so this is going to be the opportunity to discuss that follow-up. So, of course, EA has ordered DICE to halt all other projects pending the fixing of Battlefield 4. Have they done that? What is exactly the state of the game right now? Well, like I said, it's not perfect, but here's where the more positive stuff is going to start. It is better. I have not crashed at all in probably about a week now. This is a far cry from when I would reliably crash 3 or 4 times a night around the time when that China Rising video came out. Speaking of China Rising, it is now perfectly playable for me, and from what I understand, it's perfectly playable for most people. I can finally record footage on those maps without constantly dropping down into the 20s of frames per second, so that's a huge improvement over the initial China Rising release. And regardless of how many issues have objectively been fixed, we can at least commend DICE on one thing, and that is they are, yes, and I understand that it really does come down to what is being fixed and what isn't, but bear with me here for a minute. We really can commend DICE on releasing a few patches in the last few weeks rather than waiting exclusively until the next expansion comes out, which is what they did with Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3. They would only patch the game and fix anything when a new expansion came out. And here, yeah, they probably, well, I wouldn't say probably, I don't know enough about the industry to really be making these kinds of judgments, but maybe they wouldn't have done this if it weren't for EA's aggressive move against them. But at the same time, it is progress, and it's getting something done. And I think that gives us enough reason to hope that perhaps Battlefield 4 won't remain this semi-broken, really mess of muddled ups and downs and confusion for too much longer. Another thing we have to remember here is Battlefield has a history of shaky launches. I didn't play Bad Company 2 on PC, but from what I've heard, it had some server and stability issues for up to half a year after the game was initially released. And Battlefield 3, if you'll remember, had balance issues and bug issues, all kinds of glitches occurring, arguably over its entire lifespan. There were several instances of problems that would get fixed, only to introduce two more problems. And it wasn't until about the final patch that really all of the weapon balance issues were sorted out, and even then you still had things like the Stinger and the Igla, which against the final patched air vehicles were definitely arguably overpowered. So this isn't to say that it excuses Battlefield 4, or DICE rather, for their behavior in regards to Battlefield 4, not by a long shot, but it does serve, in my opinion, to give hope that at least it'll become a more enjoyable and playable experience by the time we have maybe 2 or 3 expansions out, and it's been out for about half a year or so, because I certainly enjoyed Bad Company 2, and I enjoyed Battlefield 3 a whole lot, despite all of their faults, and I think that, for the most part, I enjoyed them more and increasingly as they aged and as DICE addressed more of the problems that were plaguing those two games. And here's another point, I suppose, that I would really like to make is, in my opinion, Battlefield 4 as a base game is actually better than Battlefield 3, and arguably better than Bad Company 2. I think that if you lined all 3 of these games up, or actually let's only compare it to Battlefield 3 here, since that is the more recent release, and Bad Company is sort of more of a spin-off than a true Battlefield sequel in the lineage of Battlefield 1942, Battlefield 2, 3, 4, etc. I think that if you set Battlefield 4 and 3 side by side, and had them both working completely as intended, Battlefield 4 is the superior game. It has, in my opinion, a slightly more refined shooting system, a little bit better gunplay, although it is very, very similar to Battlefield 3's, and that's a good thing, because Battlefield 3 had excellent inherent gunplay. But it also has much improved mechanics with regards to the combat, like the suppression system. The suppression system in Battlefield 4 is how Battlefield 3's should have been from the beginning, but never really got there. The scoring system in Battlefield 4, I think, is fair. And even though I've never been one to really pay attention to stats or care about them too much, the score is still a big part of the game, and I think that Battlefield 4 scores players more fairly than Battlefield 3 did. I think that the release maps for the base game in Battlefield 4 are a lot better and a lot more interesting and a lot more playable than Battlefield 3's were. There's a whole number of other small things that I could say I like better about Battlefield 4 than Battlefield 3, but the point remains, I think it's just a better game and has more potential than Battlefield 3 did inherently. The problem, of course, though, is I preface this all by saying this is if both games are working as intended, and Battlefield 4 is obviously not working as intended. What I'm trying to get across here, though, with the last 10 minutes or so of this video is that, sure, while DICE and EA haven't given us the utmost confidence in regards to believing they're going to fix this game ultimately for the better, I don't think it's time yet to pull out the torches and pitchforks and go rioting in the streets over how permanently broken and horrible the game is, that it's beyond all hope of fixing, that this has doomed DICE, that this has doomed the Battlefield franchise, that all hope is lost. Some of the things that I'm seeing posted online, and yes, of course it's posted online, of course there's going to be a lot of extremists out there, but they're just absurd. People saying that it's already completely dead. We might as well just go back to Battlefield 3 for the next 2 years because this game is forever going to be broken and forever going to be a pile of unfixable fucking shit. It's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous and unfounded. It's not that it's completely unfounded. It's that I guess I just don't want to give up hope on something that I see so much potential in. As I just said, Battlefield 4, in my opinion, is a better game than Battlefield 3 was. And if DICE can just fix these technical problems that are plaguing it, make it more stable, get some of these weird server rubber banding and microstutter issues fixed, if that even is something they have any control over, maybe do a couple little balancing tweaks here and there, this game really does have the potential to live on for a couple years and live a very healthy life in that time span. It has a lot of replayability. It has a lot of potential for the competitive scene. There's so much that could be done with this, and I think that we're starting with a better base product for that than we had with the last couple of games. So for all you doomsayers out there who insist that this is the end and no hope remains, I contest that. And I'm going to continue contesting that until the day comes where DICE says, nope, we're just outright not supporting this game anymore, and all y'all can go suck a dick because we already have all of your money and we don't give a fuck about you anymore. And they would be incredibly stupid to do that. EA would be incredibly stupid to let that happen from a business perspective in the long run. So I honestly can't see anything like that happening anytime soon. As a final word of warning, though, as this video starts winding down to an end, the point that I made back in that China Rising is Broken video about purchasing premium and pre-orders, that still remains. Do not, at this point, despite all the positive things I've said, do not buy the DLC for this game until it's already been out, and you see how it works if you do not have premium. And don't buy premium until they prove that they can fix some of these issues further than they have. They're off to a good start, and I do have hope in them, and I want you guys to remember that and not give up so easily. But at the same time, we have to be wary consumers. It's a balancing act. That's all I can say. Unfortunate, but the reality. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. And as always, I will see you all next time.